Hey everybody, in this lecture we're going to continue our series on the OWASP top 10 and hacking those, and we're going to specifically talk about cryptographic failures. So just like in our previous lectures, we're going to talk about the DVWA, and we're going to use that as an example on cryptographic failures for the OWASP top 10. But the interesting thing is there isn't an actual exercise in the DVWA for specifically cryptographic failures, and I'll explain why here in just a second. So also as a reminder, if you have any questions, make sure you join our Discord server, and we also have a lot of training opportunities on our Pentest TV website that covers this and many other topics. So with that, let's take a look and see what OWASP has to say specifically about cryptographic failures. So we can see here that it talks about that it's moved up to position number 2, and it was known as sensitive data exposure. But it also indicates that it's a very broad symptom rather than a specific root cause. And that's why there's no specific exercise in DVWA. So let's talk about exactly what they're discussing and what they're identifying for cryptographic failures. So if we scroll down in cryptographic failures and take a look at some examples, I think I want to go all the way to the very bottom here and take a look at their example attack scenarios. All right, so the first one is that an application encrypts credit card numbers, but the data is automatically decrypted when retrieved. So basically we're looking at a SQL injection flaw. So the second scenario is that the site doesn't use or enforce TLS, which is a security suite. That's the most up-to-date version. It replaced SSL. And then the last one is the password database uses unsalted or simple hashes to store everyone's passwords. Okay, so with these three scenarios, we basically see that we're talking about either the architecture of the website not using secure protocols, or we're talking about back-end configuration specifically in the database. Now in this case, we can't really provide good examples unless we bring up a server that has these deficiencies in the databases. And there's plenty of examples of that, but I really want to just focus on the site not using or enforcing TLS. And we see this a lot. I want to be very clear though, is that the only reason why we need TLS is if we are transporting sensitive information, specifically login credentials. All right, so let's use the DVWA and see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so I have DVWA up and running. I haven't logged in yet. The admin is the username and password is the password. But I also want to show you that I have in the background, I have Burp Suite running as well, and Interceptor is on. In fact, the browser that we were just looking at, that's actually the browser from Burp Suite. All right, so once I click login, we'll be able to capture the information that's transmitting between my system and the remote system. But before we do that, I just want to show you that the browser itself already indicates that this is not secure. So this is HTTP protocol connecting to the DVWA system. So let's go ahead and log in and take a look at what Burp Suite actually captured. All right, so we can see here that the information is captured. We have the password is password and the username is admin. All right, and so this is not encrypted data. So one area where people get confused is understanding whether or not a system is using TLS. So what actually happens when you use Burp Suite is it creates its own certificate and allows it to view all of the traffic unencrypted and creates a back-end encryption tunnel to keep it safe. But it does so that it can understand all of the traffic unencrypted. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if we go back and take a look at Pentest TV, and right now this is being intercepted by Burp Suite, and you can tell that there's something strange going on. If you look at the HTTPS, it's scratched out, and it's actually on a hold right now. The intercept is on, and Burp Suite is basically trying to process this information. So if we go back and take a look at Burp Suite, we can see that it did indeed capture a test username and password. Now it indicates that it used type HTTP because again it created its own certificate so that it could view our traffic in the clear text, anything coming back as well, so that we can do an analysis on it. Now it still does encrypt the traffic once it leaves Burp Suite so that the information is secure. But again, we need to be able to see it, so Burp Suite plays this little game. So how do we know that Pentest TV is actually encrypted? So if we look up here, we can see that the actual URL is HTTPS. And I'm also going to go over to the target tab and show you a couple examples. So we've got Pentest TV, and we can see that it uses HTTPS. If we go up here, this is our DVWA, and it uses HTTP. Right? So we can see just from here that whether or not it's using HTTPS or not. So before we wrap up, I want to talk about a couple little things, specifically about the OWASP Top 10 and again about cryptographic failures. I'm going to scroll down and we're going to take a look at the actual description, and I want to point out that the first question is any data transmitted in clear text? Now this can be deceiving. The fact that we tried to log in means that we want that information to be secure. So the username and password should be secure when it goes across the internet. However, not all traffic needs to be encrypted, and so keep in mind that just because it doesn't use an encrypted format when communicating to a remote system doesn't mean that it's not in compliance. So let me give you an example. If you need to download an image, or let's say a copy of an operating system, that in itself isn't sensitive information. So it doesn't always make sense to encrypt data, especially if it's a large amount of data that has no sensitive information in it. One other one I want to point out too is that it talks about, is this received certificate and trust chain properly validated? There are a lot of servers out there that don't have valid certificates, especially internally. That doesn't mean that the communication isn't secure. It just means that you can't verify that that server is who it says it is. And so in a lot of cases, when you see that, this doesn't rise to anything usually any higher than a low or an informational. So again, just because you see these things within your pen test doesn't necessarily mean it's something to get really overly excited about. So that's it. So if you have any questions, again, swing over to our Discord server. We're happy to chat with you. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.